Welcome to WikiPodcast. Today, we're continuing our deep dive into existentialism in modern thought. This is part 4 of our mini-series, and we're tackling a philosopher whose ideas, well, they really shook things up. Martin Heidegger.
Yeah, definitely a major figure.
Our focus today is specifically on his groundbreaking exploration of what it means for something to be, and the framework he developed, his existential ontology.
Right.
We've got a lot of material here, biography, key concepts, the context around his work, and our mission is to unpack some of his core, maybe challenging ideas about being.
Exactly. And we want to get beyond just, defining terms.
Yeah.
We want to really understand his central question, what is being?
Sounds simple, but it's not.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Heidegger basically argued that Western philosophy for centuries had been asking the wrong questions.
Yeah.
So instead of just, why is there anything, which is a huge question in itself, his fundamental ontology asks something maybe even deeper. What does it even mean for something to be?
Okay. So it's like before you can talk about what exists, you need to understand what existing itself means.
Precisely. Think of it like trying to understand different kinds of chairs. Before you list them all, maybe you need to understand what chairness is. Or maybe better, what it means for anything to show up for us in the first place.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so let's introduce the man himself a bit. Martin Heidegger.
Born 1889, died 1976. German philosopher, hugely influential.
And his influence spreads across phenomenology, hermeneutics, existentialism, obviously.
Yeah, but also ontology, technology, art, language, metaphysics, even the history of philosophy itself. He touched on a lot. A giant of 20th century continental thought.
And we should probably mention briefly his complex relationship with the Nazi Party.
Yes, it's important context. His membership and support are deeply controversial and part of his biography.
But for this deep dive, while acknowledging that context, we're really focusing on the philosophical work itself, right? This exploration of being.
Exactly. That's the core for today. So back to this idea that philosophy got being wrong.
Yeah, what was his issue with the tradition?
He felt they treated being as such, like it was some kind of ultimate thing, an entity you could define and point to.
Like God or some fundamental substance.
Sort of, yeah. Or just another concept to categorize. Heidegger said, no, you can't treat being like just another object. It's not a being.
Okay.
So he shifted the focus radically to the meaning of being. He believed understanding what to be means is, well, it's foundational for everything else.
It's the basis for all understanding.
That's the idea. It's the ground we stand on, philosophically speaking.
And this brings us squarely to his major work, Being and Time, 1927.
Yep, that's the cornerstone.
Right.
And it's where he introduces Dasein.
Dasein. Okay, let's tackle that. It's a key Heidegger term.
It really is. Dasein is Heidegger's specific word for the kind of being that we humans possess. Da means there, and sein means being. So being there.
Being there. So it emphasizes our existence in a place, in a context.
In a way, yes, but it's more than just physical location. The crucial thing about Dasein, for Heidegger, is its unique relationship to being itself.
How so?
Dasein has what he calls a pre-ontological understanding of being.
Pre-ontological, meaning before philosophy.
Kind of. Think of it as a practical, lived sense of what it means to exist. We just sort of get it on some level, even if we can't articulate it philosophically. Our own existence is an issue for us. We care about it.
So we're not just objects that exist. We're beings for whom existing matters.
Exactly. And that shapes how we live, how we interact with the world.
And he analyzes this through the structure of being in the world.
Right. That's another absolutely central concept, being in the world. And it's a unified structure, not three separate things.
Okay.
The goal here is to understand how things, entities, show up for us as the specific things they are. What makes them intelligible as beings? How do we make sense of anything?
So being in the world isn't just about being physically located in the world.
No, definitely not. The end isn't like water being in a glass. It signifies involvement, engagement.
Like being in on a secret or in business.
Exactly. It's about residing, dwelling, being occupied with things, producing things, using things. It's that kind of active participation.
And the world part, is that just the physical planet?
Not just the physical stuff, no. For Heidegger, world is understood through our possibilities, our projects. Things show up for us in terms of what we can do with them, how they fit into our goals.
Ah, okay. So the meaning of things is tied to their use for us.
Very much so. He talks about circumspection. That's how we usually encounter equipment or tools. We grasp them in terms of their purpose, their towards which.
Like, I don't just see wood and metal, I see a hammer for hammering nails.
Precisely. And in our everyday lives, we're usually absorbed in what he calls the equipmental totality, this whole interconnected web of tools and tasks in our work world.
A network of meanings and purposes.
Yes, and it's a kind of radical holism. There's no such thing as an equipment, a single tool in isolation. It only makes sense within that network.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Picking up a fork. You don't usually think object made of metal with prongs. You pick it up in order to eat. It's tied into the whole activity of eating, the plate, the food, the table.
And when it's working, it's almost invisible.
Exactly. It's ready to hand in. It withdraws into its usefulness. We don't focus on the fork itself, but on the task of eating.
But what if it breaks or isn't suitable?
Then things change. If the fork breaks, suddenly it's not just part of the flow. It becomes conspicuous. It becomes an object.
An object we stare at.
Yeah, an object of focal awareness. It becomes present at hand, forehanded. We look at it, consider its properties. It's broken, it's bent, it's useless for eating.
So that brokenness makes it pop out of the network.
Right. And this shift from ready to hand to present at hand is typical. It often happens through breakdown or disruption.
So Heidegger is saying this engaged, practical mode, ready to hand, is more fundamental than the detached, objective view, present at hand.
Yes. The traditional philosophical focus on a subject observing an object. He sees that as derived from this more basic, involved way of being. It's a specific mode of encountering things, not the primary one.
Okay, that's a big shift. Now, you mentioned existentialia earlier. What are those?
Right, existentialia. These are the fundamental structures or characteristics of Dasein's being in the world. He uses this term to distinguish them from categories, which Aristotle used for objects. Existentialia apply to Dasein's existence.
And the main ones are understanding, attunement, and discourse.
Those are three key ones he analyzes deeply in Being and Time.
Okay, let's take understanding. Is that like intellectual understanding?
Not primarily.
Yeah.
For Heidegger, understanding Verscheen is more fundamental. It's our basic ability to be. It's know-how.
Know-how. Like riding a bike.
Yeah, that kind of practical competence. It's about grasping possibilities, our potentiality for being, knowing how to get around, how to do things, how to navigate our world. It underlies theoretical knowledge.
Okay, what about attunement? Sounds like mood.
It relates to mood, but it's deeper. Attunement, or Befindlichkeit, is about how we find ourselves already thrown into a situation. It's our effectiveness, how the world matters to us before we even think about it.
So it's not just feeling happy or sad, but a more basic sense of being situated.
Exactly. It's how the world is disclosed to us emotionally, you could say. Certain things stand out, certain possibilities seem open or closed based on this fundamental mood or attunement. It's how we're found in the world.
And the third one, discourse. Read.
Discourse, read, is the articulation of this understanding and attunement. It's how we make sense of the world, structure it into intelligible patterns that can be shared.
So it's related to language, but not identical.
Right. Language is one manifestation of read, but read itself is more fundamental. It's the underlying articulation of intelligibility that makes language possible. It's how we differentiate things in practice, how meaning gets structured.
Wow. Understanding, attunement, discourse. And these are all interconnected.
Deeply interconnected. And Heidegger brings them together under the concept of care, Sorge.
Care. That sounds important.
It's the fundamental structure of Dasein's being. He gives this famously dense definition. Right.
ahead of itself being already in the world, as being amidst entities encountered within the world.
Okay, let's break that down. Ahead of itself.
That relates to understanding our projection towards future possibilities, our potential.
Being already in the world.
That connects to attunement, our thrownness, finding ourselves already in a world that matters, shaped by the past and present situation.
And being amidst entities.
That's linked to discourse and our everyday dealings with things we encounter, making sense of the present.
So care brings together future, past, and present engagement.
Exactly. And the unifying element, the deep structure of care, is temporality. Time isn't just clocks ticking, it's the horizon of Dasein's being. This is why the analysis leads straight into time in the later part of the book.
This is, incredibly dense but fascinating. Okay, let's shift slightly. What about Das Man, the they?
Ah, yes. Das Man, the they, or sometimes the one. This is crucial for understanding our social existence.
So Dasein isn't solitary.
Not at all. Heidegger is very clear.
Being with others, Mitsein, is just as fundamental as being oneself, Selbstsein. We are always already social beings.
Okay, so what is Das Man?
Dasamya refers to, well, everyone and no one in particular. It's the anonymous they of public life. They say one does this, people think.
The general consensus, the crowd.
Kind of. It's the social norm, the average way of being that we tend to fall into. It's those from whom one does not distinguish oneself. We are just one among the many.
So it's about conformity.
Largely, yes. Heidegger emphasizes that we don't start as isolated individuals who then build the social world. We're thrown into a shared world that's already structured by Das Man. It provides the background understanding, the unspoken rules.
So it's like the cultural air we breathe.
That's a good way to put it. It shapes our possibilities, our tastes, our opinions, often without us even realizing it. It's this non-explicit background.
He talks about the dictatorship of Das Man. That sounds pretty negative.
It can be, because, he argues, we often let Das Man dictate our lives. We do what they do, enjoy what they enjoy, get outraged by what they find shocking. It prescribes our everyday way of being.
And this makes it hard to be ourselves.
Exactly. It covers over our unique possibilities and our own finitude. If we're just living according to the day's self, how can we even ask the fundamental question of our own being? This leads directly to the challenge of authenticity.
Authenticity, Eigentlichkeit. You mentioned this means ownedness.
Yes, literally ownness or being one's own. Authenticity is the counter-concept to falling into Das Man.
So it's about breaking free from the crowd.
It's more about taking responsibility for your being, making a stand on your own possibilities, your own projects, what you're living for. It's about choosing yourself, in a way.
Is it about discovering a true self hidden inside?
Not exactly like finding something pre-made. Heidegger suggests the self of authenticity is more like an ongoing construction, a narrative we take responsibility for. It's about resolutely facing your own possibilities and limitations.
How does one become authentic then? Does Heidegger give instructions?
Not a step-by-step guide, but he points to certain experiences that can shake us out of the complacency of Das Man.
Like what?
Powerful moods, especially anxiety, angst. Not fear of a specific thing, but a more general anxiety that reveals the nothingness underlying the world and discloses Dasein as an isolated individual facing its own potentiality.
That sounds intense.
It is. Also, the direct confrontation with death, not just intellectually knowing you'll die, but facing your own finitude, can shatter everyday concerns and reveal what truly matters.
Facing mortality.
Yes. And he also talks about the call of conscience, which, again, isn't a moral judge in the usual sense.
What is it then?
It's Dasein calling itself, from its absorption in Das Man back to its own most potentiality for being. It discloses our guilt, which he interprets as a kind of debt, the debt we owe ourselves to take over the possibilities we've been thrown into.
So authenticity is about accepting this thrownness, this finitude, this responsibility.
Yes. Resolving to accept the openness, the potentiality that we fundamentally are. It's less about intellectual understanding and more a kind of hard-won insight, where the ego lets go and allows our finitude to manifest.
And did this idea of authenticity stay the same throughout his work?
It evolved. Especially in his later writings, the focus shifts. Some see his later concept of erigness often translated as the event or appropriation of developing these themes. It points towards a more cosmic interplay of being revealing and concealing itself, and Dasein's role within that. But the core idea of taking ownership, of resolute openness, remains significant.
Okay, let's try to unpack what this all means. Heidegger's journey into being is definitely challenging, but also incredibly rich.
It really is. He forces you, the listener, to rethink the most basic assumptions about existence, to look beyond just subjects and objects.
Right, to see the ways we're actually engaged in the world, the way things show up for us through use and purpose.
And when you start thinking about being in the world, really think about it. Does it change how you see your own everyday interactions with your keys, your computer, the people you talk to?
Yeah, it makes you notice that practical engagement. And the idea of Das Man, that's pretty provocative too. Can you recognize its influence in your own life? The pressure to conform, the opinions you hold, because everyone does.
It's definitely something to reflect on. How much is genuinely you and how much is absorbed from the they?
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? Hopefully this deep dive has offered some maybe surprising facts, some aha moments without being totally overwhelming.
Heidegger's work isn't easy, but it invites ongoing thought. It's not about finding final answers maybe, but about deepening the questions.
And here's maybe a final thought to consider. How might thinking about the meaning of being, this Heideggerian approach, influence how you approach other things? Like understanding different cultures or tackling complex problems? Does it make you pause and consider the underlying framework, the way of being, before jumping to conclusions?
Yeah, does it encourage looking at the fundamental assumptions at play? That could be a really powerful takeaway.
Thanks for listening. Write us in the comments your opinion on the episode and what other topics you would like us to talk about. Subscribe to the channel to help us reach more listeners. Thank you and have an amazing day.